I couldn't understand why life was so hard for people. We visited the Goree Island old slave fort, and I just sat there and cried for hours just because I couldn't understand. I couldn't, square away how someone could be so cruel to another human being. The cost of using technology in the workplace is reducing, which means that eventually it bumps up against, it becomes cheaper to use a machine than it does a person. So that then starts putting wage pressure on people to work for less and less and less. 70 million more workers are going to join the workforce of sub-Saharan Africa before 2050. This is a massive bulge of young people that are going to leave education and come into the workforce. Where are they going to work? What are they going to do?
I'm Vivian Boaz, and this is the EHS Unplugged podcast, the show where we share tips on home and workplace safety, environmental sustainability, and health and wellness tips. Join us as we explore these topics with industry experts and learn to create a safer and healthier world.
Hi guys, my name is Vivian Boaz, and welcome back to another episode of the EHS Unplugged podcast. Now, the guest joining us today is one of the leading advocates of decent work. I'm going to let him introduce himself because if I do it personally, I won't do him any justice. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Vivian. My name's Alan Stevens. I'm from the UK, but my heart's always in Africa. So it's a real pleasure to be here today. I'm a fan of the podcasts and I feel a real privilege to be here today. So thank you.
Okay, so Alan Stevens, we know you in the world of OSH, but there was an Alan before all this, before you joined the world of OSH. So tell us about that. Before you started really pushing for decent work?
Yeah, I as you know, I'm not by background a OSH professional. I just believe in decent work and fairness to people. Goes right back to school. At school, I was a normal guy, working class entrepreneurial family. And real fascination with the world. What I really wanted to be was a pilot, but unfortunately my ears don't work too well. I'm a bit deaf, and quite understandably there aren't any jobs, quite rightly so, for deaf pilots. So I had to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But what influenced that decision was something that happened quite a few years before that. It was when I was about maybe 10, 11 years old. I was a typical cocky little boy, mischievous, and perhaps took things for granted. And my mum and dad recognised that and sent me on a extended exchange school trip to West Africa, and spent a lot of time, quite a significant part of that school year, in West Africa, in Senegal, Sierra Leone, Gambia. And it was a real eye-opener, seeing how many people had to live their lives so different from mine in the UK. I couldn't understand why life was so hard for people. We visited the Goree Island old slave fort, and I just sat there and cried for hours just because I couldn't understand. I couldn't, square away how someone could be so cruel to another human being. And I made a promise to myself then that I'd try and do something in my life to level things up a little bit. And that stuck with me for years and years and years. I left school and first made a career in leadership and management in financial services industry mainly. I worked really hard, and I was lucky to have the best bosses ever that were just, developing me at such a pace. And before I knew it, before I was 30 years old, I had very significant senior roles across financial services. At one point, I had about 250,000 people that were responsible. I was responsible for their development across the world. We were doing lots of mergers, acquisitions work in America, in Asia, and so forth. And it was a great time. But I wanted to kind of have that as a chapter in my life rather than be a corporate guy forever. So maybe about 30 years ago, now I left the corporate world and set up a group of consultancy companies. I joined some real gurus from the world of human behaviour and high performance. And the companies that we set up, we focused on different kind of angles for each of them. So one of the companies was focused on high performing leadership. So we worked a lot with professional sport teams, whether it was the Chelsea Football Academy, the England cricket team, Fenerbahce Football Club in Turkey, and so forth. And we learned so much from them. We helped them with general leadership and management, but boy, did I take a lot away from that in terms of performance conversations. And we used that for many years, those techniques in our corporate leadership and management programs. And still to this day, with people that I've worked with, we use those techniques because most corporations think they're developing people and having good performance conversations. They're not. A lot of the performance conversations that corporations use are quite destructive. So anyway, so those kind of things. And there was other general consultancy companies within our group. But the one that really fascinated me and engaged my own interest more and more from the group was the post-conflict reconstruction work we did. We worked for the UN agencies, the US government, the British government, going into war zones just as they were finishing and working with communities to get them back on their feet. Because what often happens, whether it's a human conflict or a natural disaster or famine or whatever, is the vacuum that leaves in society gets filled by people that don't necessarily have the best intent for the community. So the faster you can fill that vacuum, the stronger the society can bounce back. Getting kids back into school, getting good judicial systems that are not corrupt, those kind of things, inward investment. And we were really doing some great work, whether that be in the Balkans, in Kosovo and places like that, or Iraq, where I was working with the Kurdish people, down in Syria, Yemen, across to Sierra Leone. Worked in a lot of those areas, but it was really tiring and challenging. And I kind of conked out a bit. And it was maybe 7-8 years ago, I sold up and retired and thought I'd spend the rest of my life doing what I love, which is fishing. I love being on the beach and, just watching the end of my rod and just daydreaming. And that's where I'm really happy. But then I was approached by the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, the OSH, to do some work for them because and it's a brilliant organisation. OSH is fantastic and they've been really good to me. And they recognised there was a real opportunity and a need for the OSH community to engage strategically with those that direct the world at the highest level. So the United Nations, the ILO, the World Health Organization, the UNGC, all of those kinds of things, as well as important government figures, the Commonwealth Secretariat, people like that. So I was recruited to build a team to engage and build programs of work with them. So that golden thread from, the ILO conventions, but what does that mean for national OSH legislation? What does that mean for programs of work? How then do you align industry and the OSH professionals behind that to deliver that? So I've been fortunate and blessed to do that for the last 7 years. And what really motivates me, coming back to the promise I made for Africa, is I've had the opportunity to work here in East Africa, but also in West Africa, to deliver that and to really make sure that cascade of intent, good intent, flows all the way down to the hardest to reach communities. So I'm really proud of that. But now I need to get out of the way and the next chapter in my life. So I'm still absolutely madly committed to decent work, but more broadly than just OSH. OSH is a really, really important element of decent work, but actually creating the jobs in the first place and decent pay and how to get into markets, how to sell stuff, inward investment, all of these things that I understand more systemically. The OSH is the keystone in it, but how do I build the other bits around it is something that I really want to focus on now, alongside just taking it a little bit easier. So a bit more fishing and a bit more charity work.
Yeah. So, I want to take you back. Your role at IOSH.
Yeah.
One of the things you've done, which is amazing, has been really highlighting the OSH gaps in the informal sector. I know you're working with communities in Ghana, you're working with communities in Kenya, but also with the Ministry of Labour through DOSH. Just tell us about that. What does that work really involve?
It's a great question because legislation can only go so far. And if you look at a country like Kenya, where I think it's around 80%, forgive me if I'm wrong, but a huge percentage of the people are outside of the formal economy. So legislation can't reach these people often. The burden of bad working practices is completely felt by the family. Kids drop out of schools, the debts are accrued and mums end up making the most unimaginable decisions possible to put food on the table. And who wants that? Who wants that? So the movement of people into the formal economy from the informal economy is really important, but that has to happen with decent jobs, safe and healthy jobs. Otherwise, that burden just shifts from the family to the state. And if the state can only pay for services, social security payments and things like that through taxation, Kenya's a democracy, and what governments get elected through putting taxes up? They don't. So it's got to be a fair, decent, safe and healthy migration from the informal economy to the formal economy. And that's what we're trying to do here. So working with the amazing visionary people like Dr. Nyandusi and his team in DOSH, who are the most inspiring, decent people I've had the privilege to work with for many years. Their vision for decent work in Kenya needs to cascade down through into the real world. So having had the opportunity and the privilege to support DOSH in the rollout of the new national plan and the programme of work, it's also brought us through my connections at the Commonwealth, attending the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, for example, in Rwanda, maybe 3-4 years ago now, meeting Nana Wanjao and the team from Commonwealth Business Women Africa, who do all of this work. And it's really important to understand these are their projects, okay, that we've been supporting from a occupational safety and health technical perspective, and OSH continues to do that now. I'm no longer there. Their focus is on economic improvement, which then gives them power and the ability to make their own decisions. So the programs are Commonwealth Business Women Africa programs, of which we've been blessed to support.
I mean, I will come back to that because
sure.
there's a lot I want to share with the audience with regards to that. But let's come back to the OSH professionals. One of the things that you speak so much about on the global stage and on the African continent is about upskilling. And you feel like this is one of the areas where we are lacking a bit as a continent. I mean, how can we really improve in this area?
Well, I think there's a difference between volume of capacity and quality of the capacity. Okay, what I see in Africa is the most dedicated, hardworking, deep-thinking OSH professionals that I come across anywhere in the world. I feel it's such an inspiration attending a Westpac conference, for example. I go away and tell everybody about how brilliant it is. It really, truly a fantastic group of people. But you need resources. You need more of you. You need more resources to deliver the programs of work that Africa needs. I think it's really important for the communities across East Africa, to work together. So the OSH bodies here in Kenya, the OSH bodies in Tanzania and Uganda, for example, there's similar industries, similar problems. The boda drivers, the agriculture, the extractive industries, all the things that you look at as a community across those three countries are quite similar. And to work together, the three core OSH bodies will stop the bad jobs just moving around. If you move together, that's great. But equally, it has to also be a vertical support where the three strong organisations support the three amazing governments that are trying to do the right thing. So, my encouragement would be towards working closely with the government, understanding what the national programs of work are, and then what limited resources the OSH professionals have here, get fully behind the industry segments and program of work that the governments are looking to measure. And things, as I say, for example, like the boda drivers, you see beautiful women that spent so much money on their hair here in Kenya, but they don't wear a crash helmet. And I get it, because 3-4 other people have worn that crash helmet that day. But hang on a minute, a lady spends money on her hair, she'll spend money on her clothes, she'll spend money on her purse, her bag, but she won't protect the most important thing in her life, which is her brain. This is the culture that I think, working with government, the OSH community and the ministries of transport, you can do something really special here within the limited resources you have. If you scattergun, you're not going to get somewhere. So get behind really, really important causes and give it your all.
I mean, we've talked so much about health and safety, which is something as OSH professionals we're promoting. And OSH has been big on that, and you have too. But do you think we've attained the balance between health and safety?
Nobody does. the gravity always pulls, in my humble opinion, OSH professionals anywhere in the world towards safety because it's immediate, it's obvious, it's measurable here and now. But if you look at the statistics, you know this, your audience knows this, that the real issue is not accidents. It's dwarfed by the consequences of long-term health issues because of bad work practices. We've seen this week, Kijado, the mining industry, the men in the proper mines and the women in the informal sector that are scavenging from around the mines. They're breathing in dust with a high percentage of that silica content. That is going to really mess their lives up in 10, 20 years' time. And it may not seem a priority now, but if it isn't addressed now, it will cripple healthcare systems in years to come, just as we've learnt in Europe around things like use of asbestos. By the time you realise there's a problem, it's too late. The underlying health conditions have been impacted to the point where it's very difficult to reverse. So now's the time for the OSH community to balance the immediate, really important things around safety, yes, of course, but also, exposure to occupational cancers. The sun shines here a lot. People working outside, say we know where they are. Pesticides in agriculture, the sunshine, solar, asbestos, silica, diesel exhaust fumes. You know where those carcinogens and future cancer issues are going to emerge from. Right now, you've got this rapid urbanization of East Africa. People are breathing in diesel fumes more rapidly now than ever. The kids are walking along to school. All these things are going to come back if you don't address them as a community now.
Yeah. Because that's a very good one, because even the funding that we have right now is directed towards, the health and safety issues that are happening now.
Right.
No one thinks about 10 years down the line. So how can we redirect, funding towards health effects 10 years, 20 years down the line? How can we do that as a country, as a continent?
I think you can do a lot by design. There's a tremendous construction industry here now. So how can buildings for workplaces as well as residential settings, how can they be built with better occupational safety and health in mind? Commonwealth Business Women Africa. This week we visited what the Maasai ladies are calling the pit stop. And it's a beautiful area where they can make their produce in a well-lit, well-ventilated, safe, healthy setting. That can be done with very little money that will impact the lives of people immediately. But again, not just to keep them safe today, but to keep them healthy for many years to come.
Now that we're talking about funding, this is also something you mentioned so much about inwards investment, but it's not happening, as much as it should for the continent. So what exactly is holding investors back?
Oh, honestly, Vivian, this is my biggest frustration is the wrong word, but biggest point of focus that I think I've been talking about so much, but so many people still need to hear. The world is awash with money. Since the financial crisis of the early 2000s, governments across the world have been printing money left, right and centre. At the same time, there's a huge transfer of money from people my age and older to the bright younger people of your generation that actually care more about not just the goods they buy, but how those goods are made, right? So ethical funds have really grown over many years. There's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in ethical investment funds that money is looking for a home, okay? Now, those ethical investment funds have covenants on them or rules of what they can invest in and not. And most of those ethical funds, if not all of them, right up front in the terms of reference for those fund managers, usually say that, we must not breach any fundamental human rights. So for many years, the questions have been asked from those fund managers around modern slavery, child labour, equal rights for women, collective bargaining, all of those kind of things. But of course, 2 years ago, I've lost track of time, when OSH was declared a fundamental human right, that caused a great opportunity, but also an extra hurdle for inward investment, because those same fund managers now have to ask the question, before we give you our money to invest in your factory or your farm or your roads or your aqueduct or whatever, hydroelectric system. Show me how you are protecting your workers, because we cannot give you our money if you are going to hurt your workers or make them sick. So that is delaying the flow of capital across the world. Okay, so to gain regional or national competitive advantage or corporate competitive advantage, the secret now is to demonstrate to the investor community, these fund managers, that you will not hurt or make sick your workers, right? This is so important, because there's more money looking for a home right now than there are investable projects. They've woken up to this in Southeast Asia, where the garment and apparel industry now is working really hard to prove to the major brands that buy their stuff that they're looking after their workers. And you can see a real transformation going on in certain sectors in Southeast Asia around recognizing the really importance of looking after workers from a moral perspective, of course, but also an economic perspective. All right, good OSH is good business sense right now. The finance directors of organisations need to wake up for this, that the cost of capital will be lower if you can demonstrate to those that are lending that capital that you are lower brand and reputational risk because you don't hurt your people. And then there's productivity improvements and all these kind of things. We know that any investment in OSH gives a financial return. Yet why do people still think that good OSH is a cost to a business? It's not. And we need as a community to shout that louder and more clearly to those that are making decisions. And it's so important. You can see right now in Kenya in June, I think it's June, the World Benchmarking Alliance, who benchmark the top 2,000 companies in the world, right? And one of the benchmarks is the social benchmark, which includes occupational safety and health. They're coming here right to Nairobi to have their annual Allies convention, talking about exactly this. They want to see field visits. They want to see the country to understand just what it's like here in Kenya and East Africa from an investor's perspective. So it's so important. And I think people in the region here really need to understand this more than they have.
Mm. Do you think what's holding us back? Because I really want to, I'm bringing you back to this, the fact that we really haven't seen the value in OSH as a continent, as a country, Kenya. Could that be one of the reasons?
It could be. I think if you look at, here's what I see going on, right? If you look at the world's, the supply and demand of labour and jobs, if we look at somewhere like North Asia, Japan, parts of Europe, North America, where an ageing population means that there is a shortage of a workforce, okay? So you need to look after the ones you've got because it's difficult to find another one. I'm being very direct here, forgive me, but in Africa, where there is perhaps a surplus of labour, they're easier to substitute. So if somebody gets sick or hurt, and especially if they're working from an informal perspective, you just get another, sadly, I hate to say this, but it's easy to just get another worker. And if you take that then into what really concerns me on this point is the gig economy. Because the concept of the gig economy and contracts for working only really works where there's equilibrium. If you look in Northern Europe and Northern Asia, for example, where there's a scarcity of workers, the power sits with the worker. The only way really the equilibrium can be redressed is through importing labour, which is fine from a North Asian and a European perspective. But do we really want to take all the nurses from Zimbabwe? Do we really want to take all the technicians, the brain drain from those emerging economies? So we need to kind of get this balance in the emerging, the strong developed economies. But when you come to somewhere like here, where there's a huge surplus of workforce, and let's be fair, we haven't even started yet. The tsunami of people entering the workplaces to come. 70 million more workers are going to join the workforce of sub-Saharan Africa before 2050. This is a massive bulge of young people that are going to leave education and come into the workforce. Where are they going to work? What are they going to do? The continent needs to produce strong economic systems to absorb that labour force now. Otherwise, there's going to be, wage pressure to deflate wages because people will undercut somebody else to do a job. They'll be prepared to sacrifice long-term careers for short-term contracts just to get some money in. Or what's really worrying is because of that uncertainty in life, people are more prepared to do risky work because there is no option. With the reduction in financial security comes an increased propensity to take risk. And this is what I really worry about in sub-Saharan Africa.
Some of the other things you're very passionate about is technology, AI. I mean, there's a lot of technological advancements happening around us, and the fear among OSH professionals is that we're going to be replaced, say 10, 20, 50 years. But you don't think that's ever going to happen?
No, I do. I think there's a real risk. There's a real risk for every sector. People are not understanding how fast AI is moving towards substitution workers in the workplace. I mean, there are car factories in China now that don't even have lights in the factory because there's no people that working in the factory to need lights. It's working in the dark because everything is AI and robotics. You know, it's massive pace. Now, there's an opportunity for this. There's a great opportunity for technology to replace high-risk jobs. But there's almost like an arms race happening at the moment, which is really will be felt, if it's not already, in countries like Kenya, where the cost per machine or robot is reducing really fast, right? So the cost of using technology in the workplace is reducing, which means that eventually it bumps up against, it becomes cheaper to use a machine than it does a person. So that then starts putting wage pressure on people to work for less and less and less as the cost of substituting people for machinery comes down and down and down, particularly in early entry jobs. And again, this is the thing that I've referred to a while ago. These young people that are going to come into the workforce of Africa doing early entry jobs, those are the kind of jobs that machines are replacing. So you've got that. When it comes to the OSH professional, no, there's if you look at what's happening in Japan, the use of AI in the workplace, there's a new standard that's coming to be launched this year. The Japanese standards agency are working with others across the world. Collaborative working is the concept. Forgive me, I'm not sure what the title of the standard will be finalised as, but it's all about this. It's where AI meets the worker. Okay, so it's dynamic risk assessment conducted by the ever-learning technology, making sure that everybody's reminded every day when they start work, during work. So people wearing, wearable devices, CCTV in the workplace, all these kind of things, all the time are watching the worker, the machines, and everything is dynamically adjusting to make sure things are as they should be. So I think will the OSH professional be replaced? No. Will they have a completely different skill set to the current skill set? Absolutely. The future OSH professional needs to understand technology, AI, that collaborative interaction between AI. The days of walking around with a clipboard are going to disappear fast. It's all the future OSH professional will be a highly paid, highly tech savvy, super smart, super influential person. It's really exciting, but get your head around that now.
Mm-hmm. Oh. So you've spoken so passionately about all these things there. I mean, OSH, the OSH professional, about your love for Africa, the plans you have for the continent. But you're now out of IOSH. You're retired, which I must say you look happier.
Yeah. No.
So what's the plan? Are you leaving this to individuals who are actively involved in the workplace, or are you going to play some role going forward?
I mean, yeah, I feel happy because I've got a great opportunity to do so much. I'm grateful for the I think I'll be very happy about the way things shape up. But before I say about that, please again, 7 brilliant years at IOSH. They gave me the opportunity and they trusted me to re-engineer the vocabulary of how OSH professionals engaged on the international stage. I'm really proud of the way now that we haven't, my team that I've left behind haven't just change things within OSH, but when you look at the vocabulary of governments and the UN bodies across the world, there's a significant change for the better in terms of how they talk about the system, the interaction across the global system. So I'm really grateful. I'm really proud. No regrets. But I say, I think looking forwards, let me put it a different way. If somebody trips over in front of me in the street, I'll stop and help them pick up this stuff, right? If I see somebody across the road fall over, I'll cross the road to help them. The fact that somebody here is a few thousand miles away from where I live back, how is that right that I walk away at this point knowing that these people need to be picked up? And I go back to the cozy life of living in the UK. I could easily go to the beach and be really happy, do my fishing, but you can't unlearn the things that these people need. I think about it all the time. It's a calling. It's not a job. So yes, I'm not at OSH anymore, and I know OSH will continue to help people. Nothing will change from an OSH perspective, and that's great. But me as an individual, I cannot walk away from these ladies now. I mean, in North Ghana, they call me Awimbolma, which is sent from God, and you look at these people that have been praying for help, and then they call you that. There's a big compliment in there, but there's also, I feel personally, a massive burden and obligation to not desert these ladies. And it's the same here. The Maasai ladies, they started calling me, you heard it, what is it? Saruni, saviour. I mean, you hear that and you think, wow, I don't deserve it. I don't believe that I've done anything special, but you can't leave these ladies. You can't. So the future's going to be around helping them, decent work. I really want to. It's actually, I think I'm going to be busier than I've ever been, but it's going to be on things that I want to do. So there's a big chunk of me that, for my own well-being, as I'm getting really old now, I need to put my own well-being and health at probably the front of the queue. And there's only one thing in life that really recharges me, and that's fishing, funny enough. So I'm going to do a lot of fishing, and I'm gifted. I'm grateful that I've got sponsors that are going to pay me to do that, which is really cool. But then beside that, I'm going to write books. My first one's going to come out soon, Hooked and Cooked. So not only how do you catch fish, but how do you cook them? So that catch and cook thing, sustainable living is something I'm really interested in. And then how do you extend that? So one of the things I want to do beyond that is then almost like a travel thing, where I'll come to places like Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Ghana, for example, and spend time with communities that are in the margins, making money from the sea. What is it like to be to spend a day in the life of a seaweed farmer and so forth, and I love going out on the canoes in Ghana with the local fishermen and dugout canoes, and they're living from day to day, and it's just such a brilliant thing. So bringing to the attention, if I can, of the world through filming these people, that there's actually, a good story there where with the right support, these people can move forward. And of course here, the capacity requirements for Africa are huge from an OSH perspective, but decent work is really, if you'll allow me to broaden that out. So wherever I can work with anyone that is serious and meaning towards promoting and developing decent work for the emerging economies of Africa, where my heart is, I will work for them and with them. So I'm taking on a few non-exec director roles at the moment with organisations that are doing that and doing some consultancy work for others that are really, really committed to the decent work agenda, which is great. So yeah, it's going to be a busy time, but a good time, I think. I think you're going to see more of me now than before.
Yeah, I mean, the continent needs you. We don't want you to just, go back into that. But it's really good that you've had a very impressive career. You've had a very positive impact on so many people. You announcing that you're going into retirement is going to shock the world if I'm being honest. Your role as a head of strategic engagement at OSH really did not afford you the freedom to have, fun on the side, or, just have that what we are calling, well-being, which is very big again in Kenya at the moment. So for OSH professionals who are actively involved in the industry or who are just entering the profession, what advice would you give to them, those wanting to attain a work-life balance? Because from what you've said, you really didn't manage to.
No, I mean, that's self-inflicted, right? One thing IOSH were really strong on and very firm on is that. In fact, even in the IOSH travel policy, it refers to the need to spend personal time recharging. Absolutely not. No, it's just a personal thing of pushing myself really hard. What I'm trying to do now, though, is combine both sides of the coin, the things that I'm passionate about out of work with the opportunity to promote decent work locally. So, for example, here, look, these, I don't know if you know these are fish flies for fly fishing, okay? So there's lots of really like strange weirdos like me across the world that love fishing, and there are different techniques. And one of the techniques is to use a fish fly. This is a big red one, and here you've got like a streamer where you've got this kind of thing, and these are really cool, right? Really difficult to use, but people across the world spend a lot of money on these kind of things, and I love doing it. What I didn't know was until about 2 years ago that the finest fish flies in the world are made right here in Kenya. It's a skill that was brought by the Scottish many years ago and was developed over towards the Rift Valley lakes. But it's a natural thing for, if you think the Maasai women with their attention to detail, their love for preciseness with beading and embroidery, it's a natural thing for them to actually really enjoy making these flies. Now, when you look at the ladies in Kajiado that were picking rocks from the quarries, scavenging and, really struggling from day to day, they'd pick a huge sack of rocks, and they'd get maybe 20, 30 Kenyan shillings a day for that under the baking sun, breathing dust in. Now this fly, they can make this in maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and get 40 Kenyan shillings, working in a safe environment, in a healthy environment, and with the knowledge that there's orders to come. They've already made and sold over 2,500 of these since we trained them not that long ago, a few months back, I think last May. So in, no time at all, they've sold 2,500 of these. Now, every time I look at one of these or when I use one of these, that means they haven't had to pick a sack of rocks. I get really emotional about this because, this isn't just a world-class fish fly. This is a fish fly that's kept a kid in school, put money on the table. That people kept those women away from exposure to workplace harm. And I love my fishing. I love helping these beautiful ladies. They're my, I love them more than anyone. And to be able to combine those two things is super cool. So, they're not separate. This is what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to bring things that I'm passionate about, and I understand where value sits in the value chain to those that need value. Because this is the thing maybe I should have said earlier, that's consistent across all of the projects that I've worked with in particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, is that there are highly valuable value chains, but very little of the value sticks to the worker that needs that value. The value is kept by others disproportionately. So if any of the projects that I'm working on from now on, I'm going to make sure that, if I'm involved with them, that the value sticks to those that need it and deserve it. People ask me about work-life balance. I'm the worst. Basically, look at me and don't do what I do. Look at me. Look, my hair's falling out. I don't sleep enough, and I'm a nervous wreck. And there are actual times in my life. I mean, I mentioned when I sold the consultancy companies is because I was really struggling. I'd had enough. I'd mentally burnt out. And it's easy to do that. I can see that here, where people work really hard to get a job and then they don't want to lose it and they feel under pressure and they've got to get, and particularly with things like OSH, where you feel that your work is keeping people safe and healthy. So it's impossible to switch off because I noticed it yesterday. We were having meetings at a hotel near here, and there was some guys in the garden putting up some marquees, and you knew who the OSH people were around there because all of them were getting twitchy, wanting to kind of try and intervene to tell these guys to be careful, and that's just built into you as an OSH professional. I think there's a difference though in terms of how I've coped. All right, whether it's advice or just me, but if you do something you love, it doesn't stress you in the same way. Right? I've always struggled doing things that I don't want to do. My work that I do is never been a job. I've never had a job in my life. I've always had a passion, a calling, a commitment, an enormous emotional investment into what I do. So that the two sides of that is the downside of that is it kills you when it goes wrong. The upside of that is that when it's right and you're feeling good, there's nothing like it. The adrenaline and the kind of chemicals in your blood, you're doing something you love and you can see it's helping people. Going back to the hard to reach communities here, you look at these ladies where a year ago they were desperate. Now they're singing, dancing and joking and more than anything coming up with their own ideas. That's the big thing for me, is that they're not sitting there now waiting for the saviour to come. Their entrepreneurial spirits come back and their belief in themselves come back. So me feeling tired, I don't care. I don't care because the reward of seeing other people flourish is so powerful. It overwhelms you. So every morning I wake up really early, 5, 6 o'clock, and I'm a really annoying person to be around because, other people want to have a sleep or a lay in. I'm noisy. I've got the radio on. I'm cooking breakfast, drive people mad. But I do it because I get up every day as if it's Christmas Day. The butterflies and excitement of knowing what we're doing. And, this is a lady out there making one of these today, which means she's not going to the quarry. Love it. Love it. So I don't know. The only advice I could give is do what you love. Find out what you love and run with it, because life's too short to do something you hate. I see the same in you. These podcasts and how you're committed to your causes, the things that you do, they don't come from an economic perspective. They come from the heart and your passion and your determination to make people's lives better. The things you do, helping kids, everybody respects you greatly, hugely greatly, because they know that it's something. This is not just a job for you. This is a calling, and so it's odd you ask me the question when probably most people's role model for that is you, not me, in terms of doing what's really important to help other people in life.
Thank you so much. I try my best. The whole idea behind EHS Unplugged podcast has always been to highlight OSH gaps, and you're doing that personally on the global stage. Yeah. So, because I'm about to cry, let me take you back to retirement.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying retirement?
Well, this is week 2, so so far so good. Yeah. It's something maybe I should have done before. I never intended to work as long. I remember when I was really young, I said I'm going to have bought my house by the time I'm 30, and there's no way I'm going to be working after I'm 50, Of course, things stretch out and what have you, but I was 60 last October and I should have sort of retired then. That was my goal. No, definitely not going past 60, but then there was a few things that were really exciting, but also I had an obligation to make sure that they went well. So I stayed on until a few weeks ago, but no, I'm ready. I'm really proud of my team at IOSH, and look, if I had stayed any longer, I'd have only got in their way. They're brilliant people, and they're really, really going to flourish now I'm not there. The job as a parent, if you will, is to raise adults, not raise dependent kids. And I see the same as a manager. That if you're a manager or a leader, your job is to get people to not just as good as you, but to show them how to take things much further than you as an individual could ever take. And I'm really proud, and I'm proud of them, and really confident that they'll do exactly that. I think that you'll see a lot better stuff come out of the team than in the future than when I was there. So no regrets about leaving anything behind. Super, super grateful of all the opportunities I had. 7 years, fine. Looking forward to retirement. Now, it's so nice that, any corporate job, you have corporate responsibilities, particularly when you have line people reporting to you. Now I don't have that. I can be, in the nicest possible way, selfish, to focus on what really matters to me without quite understandable compromises when you're using other people's money to do things, Now I'm completely in control of what I do, when I do it, and who I do it for. The consequences, the commitment, the cost, everything sits with me, and I'm really comfortable with that. So obviously I'm a normal guy, so I know I can't overextend myself, but what I have ahead is a really, really nice balance of things that I love, like writing, like the fishing, with the things that I really love as well alongside that, which is helping people.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on this episode on such a short notice. I know anytime you're in Nairobi, your schedule is very crazy because everyone wants to meet Alan, right? But so many people were looking forward to this episode. I got so many questions from people, asking me, ask Alan this, ask Alan this. So I know that so many people will watch this episode now, immediately it's released or maybe after. So maybe what do you have to say to them? Anyone who looks up to Alan Stevens, not just the OSH professionals who you've touched in a very positive way, but anyone who looks up to Alan Stevens who will come in contact with this episode?
I mean, that's an interesting question because I don't think anyone should ever look up to me. The reason I come back here is because you're such an inspiration to be around. I love the Westpac team. What you're doing here at Westpac, for example, is remarkable. The conference that I attended back in Mombasa, you listen to the quality of the debate and I watch you guys really carefully. I listen to what you say and I see your ambition and I see you're just super, super smart. I really do. I mean that. And to hang out with you is a real honor and a privilege and I feel blessed for that. So don't look up to me, look up to the people that are driving on this country, Dr. Nyandusi, the team, you guys at Westpac, some of the great employers, the lovely people at Equity Bank, Commonwealth Business Women Africa. This is a really special moment for the opportunity to move decent work agenda on. So don't look up at me, believe in yourselves and look in the mirror and be proud about what you see.
So other than getting me very emotional, I almost cried. Alan Stevens has touched on very key points, one of them being the need for us to invest in decent work. That's the only way as a continent, as a country, we'll be able to attract investors. Now, I'm also happy to report that Alan Stevens is not going anywhere. We've been so worried about that now that he's going into retirement, but it's not happening. He'll be back. If you guys love this episode and would love to be notified about future episodes, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you guys and bye.